This is the third and the final day of the symposium, and in fact this is the last panel session of the symposium called World of Archives. We have three speakers, and I guess each presentation will be based on the kind of like unique experience of the speaker regarding the issue of archives. And we're going to start with Barış Saydam. Barış Saydam is a film critic who has been writing for several magazines for years, and he is the website editor of Hayal Perdesi magazine and member of the editorial board of this magazine as well. He's been teaching film analysis courses at Cinematheque Association, and he has several books, including like history writing in cinema, another one on Yılmaz Güney, and another one on Ahmet Uluçay. And also he is the assistant coordinator and content editor at the Center for Turkish Cinema Studies, and I guess he's going to share his experience at this center today. So, yeah.
Öncelikle hepinize teşekkür ederim. Şimdi bugün normalde bu oturumda aslında üçümüz de sanıyorum kişisel deneyimlerimizden, arşivle kişisel ilişkilerimizden bahsedeceğiz. Fakat ben Türk Sineması Araştırmaları Merkezi'nin çalışmalarına geçmeden önce kısaca aslında bu çalışmalarda bizi neler tetikledi, bir de o süreçten kısaca bahsetmek istiyorum. O sürecin aslında bir devamı olarak kendimizi görüyoruz ve bir anlamda Amerika'daki devam eden süreç benzeri bir sürecin ortaya çıktığı için Türk sineması araştırmalarında. Dolayısıyla biraz o süreçten bahsedip öyle siteye geçeceğim. Şimdi Charles Altman ilk sinema tarihi çalışmalarının sinemanın teknolojik gelişimine yönelik olduğunu söyler. Bunun nedeni ise tarihsel metin üretimlerinin, filmlerinin çekimi, gösterilmesi sırasında gereken teknik teçhizatın icat edilme süreci ve sonrasındaki ticaretine yönelik kayıtlarla ortaya çıkmasıdır. Altman'ın da bahsettiği gibi Lumière'lerin ilk halka açık sinema gösterimi yaptığı günden itibaren sinema aletlerinin satışlarının listeleri tutulmuş ve buna yönelik önemli ölçüde bir kayıt gerçekleştirilmiştir. In Christie'de 1920'lerin sinema tarihçilerinin çalışmalarındaki vurgunun teknik terimler üzerinden sinemanın kitlelere tanıtılmasına yönelik olduğunu, sonrakilerin gündeminin ise daha çok sinemanın sanat olduğu düşüncesini kabul ettirmek olduğunu belirtir. İkinci Dünya Savaşı sonrası George Sade ve Rachel Lowe'un metinleriyle birlikte tekniğe ve sinemanın sanat olduğunu kanıtlamaya yönelik bakış gelişerek farklılaşmaya başlar. Ancak sinema tarih yazımı çalışmalarının yeni bir boyuta geçmesi için film gösterim merkezlerinin açılması, filmlerin tek bir mekanda arşivlenmesi, topluca filmlerin gösterilmesi ve belgelerin tarihçilerin ve araştırmalarına imkan tanıması ve bu belgelerin araştırmalara açılması gerekecektir. David Bordwell, film arşivlerinin kurulmasının sinema tarihine yönelik ilginin oluşmasında önemli bir etki yaptığını belirtir. Bu konuda Fransa'daki Cinematheque'in ve Amerika'daki MoMA'nın öncü rol oynadığını söyler. Henry Langlois'dan alıntı yaparak arşivlerin her birinin sinemayı koruduğunu ve dışarıdan saldırılara karşı sinemaya müdafaa ettiğinin altını çizer. 1930'ların ortalarında bu kurumların haricinde İsveç, Almanya, İngiltere ve İtalya'da da sinema merkezleri açılır. Dana Paul'un 1935 yılında MoMA bünyesinde açılan film kütüphanesinin sinema konusundaki akademik çalışmaları teşvik ettiğinden, araştırmacılara yeni imkanlar tanıdığından bahseder. Buradaki koleksiyon oluşturma çabalarının filmlerin izlenmesi, yayınların çıkartılması, araştırma imkanlarının zenginleştirilmesi gibi bir dizi çabanın sinema tarih yazımı ve arşivcilik çalışmalarına olumlu etkisi olduğunu söyler. Bordwell 1935'te MoMA'da açılan film kütüphanesinin başına Iris Berry'nin atandığını, Berry'nin yönetmen kocası John Abbott'la birlikte 1937 yılına gelindiğinde 700'e yakın seçkin filmden oluşan bir koleksiyon topladıklarını ifade eder. Abbott'ın buradaki amaçlarını açıklarken Abbott, bilimsel, eğitim amaçlı, belgesel, animasyon ve benzeri olmak üzere tüm filmleri kataloglamak, korumak, kullanıma açmak ve diğer kurumlarla işbirliği yaparak bu filmleri dolaşıma sokmak olduğunun altını çizer. Nitekim Amerikalı sinema tarihçisi Lewis Jacobs'ın The Rise of the American Film kitabı da buradaki arşiv sayesinde yazılır. Sinema tarihi çalışmalarının dünyada hız kazanmasına olanak sağlayan film merkezleri ve sinematek tarzındaki kurumların Türkiye'de uzun süre olmayışı, aynı zamanda filmlerin belirli bir merkezde toplanmaması, arşivlerin derli toplu bir şekilde herkesin kullanıma açılmaması, aynı zamanda Türkiye'deki sinema tarihi çalışmalarında yavaş bir şekilde ilerlemesine neden olur. Bununla ilgili Türkiye'deki en eski çalışmalar, özellikle 1960'ların ortasında kurulan iki kurumdan bahsedebiliriz. İlk başta Sinema Kulüp 7 ismiyle kurulan, daha sonra Türk Film Arşivi ismini alan Mimar Sinan Üniversitesi Güzel Sanatlar Fakültesi Sinema TV Enstitüsü'ne dönüşen kurum var Türkiye'de. Bir de Onat Kutlar öncülüğünde açılan bir Türk Sinematek Derneği'nden bahsedebiliriz 60'ların ortasında. Fakat bu kurumlar aynı zamanda dünyadaki diğer arşivler gibi çalışmıyorlar. Bu kurumlar ellerindeki filmleri derli toplu gösterimlerle birlikte seyirciye aktarmak, aynı zamanda sinematek, MoMA gibi belirli bir bakış açısıyla bu filmleri kataloglamak ve kullanıcıya sunmak amacından ziyade daha çok aslında yurt dışındaki arşivlerden kendi ellerine gelen malzemeleri film gösterimi olarak seyircilere sunmaktan ibaretler. Dolayısıyla bu kurumların varlığı da 1960'ların ortasında çok fazla yeterli değil Türkiye'de. Fakat Türk Film Arşivi'nin şöyle bir özelliği var. Aynı Lewis Jacobs'ın kitabı gibi Türkiye'de de Türk Film Arşivi'nde çalışan sinema tarihçisi Giovanni Scognamillo buradaki çalışmalardan ve izlediği filmlerden Türk sinemasında 6 Yönetmen isimli bir kitap çıkartıyor. Fakat bu kurumlardan özellikle Sinematek Derneği 80 darbesiyle kapanıyor. Diğer kurum da Güzel Sanatlar Fakültesi'ne evriliyor. Şu an elindeki filmlerin büyük çoğunluğu negatif olduğu için, dijitale aktarılmadığı için kuruma gittiğinizde hepsini izleyemiyorsunuz. Çok sınırlı sayıda film ancak sizin izlemenize açık durumda. Sinema tarih yazımının ilk örneklerine baktığımızda sıklıkla aslında aygıtın ve filmlerin tarihinin yazıldığını görüyoruz. Filmler birikmeye başladıkça ülke sinemalarının tarihleri de filmler üzerinden okunmaya başlıyor. Dolayısıyla filmler sinema tarih yazımının ortaya çıkış sürecinde sinema tarihçileri için birinci kaynak durumunda. Filmlerle ilgili afiş, fotoğraf, senaryo ve diğer dokümanlar ise ikincil belgeler. Tam da bu noktada aslında şu soruyu sormakta fayda var belki de. Arşivi olmayan, filmlerine topluca ulaşılmayan bir ülkede sağlıklı bir şekilde sinema tarihi çalışmaları yapmak mümkün mü? Türk Sineması Araştırmaları Merkezi bu soru üzerinden aslında yola çıkarak bir anlamda her şeyden önce birincil kaynakları toplama amacıyla kuruldu. Bilim ve Sanat Vakfı'nda 2014 yılında İstanbul Kalkınma Ajansı ve Sinema Genel Müdürlüğü'nün desteği ve İstanbul Şehir Üniversitesi'nin katkılarıyla açılan merkez bu anlamda eksikliği hissedilen alanlarda araştırmacılara gerekli bilgi ve belgeleri sağlamak amacıyla kuruldu. İlk yıllarında 12 kişilik bir ekiple faaliyete geçen merkezin aynı zamanda arşivleme, dijitalleştirme, kataloglama, özgün içerik üretme ve derlenen malzemelerin kullanıma sunulması olmak üzere 4 ana işlevi var. Fakat merkez sadece filmlerin arşivlenmesi, künyelenmesi ve uygun koşullarda saklanarak araştırmacıların kullanıma açılmasının yanı sıra özgün içerik üretmeyi de amaçlıyor. Bu nedenle birincil kaynak durumundaki filmlerin temin edilmesi, eski yanlışların tekrarlanmaması için yeniden filmlerin izlenmesi ve bilimsel bir yaklaşımla bilgilerin değerlenmesi amaçlanıyor. Kayıp filmler dışında bu amaçla kayıp filmleri dışarıda bıraktığımızda belki de Türk sinemasında izlenilebilen 5500 film Türk sineması araştırmalarında özellikle özgün içerik üreten kişilerce izleniliyor. Bunlarla ilgili sinopsisler, etiketler, mekan çalışmaları yapılıyor ve filmlerin künyeleri çıkartılıyor. Yine Burada da görebileceksiniz aslında dijitalleştirme çalışmalarından bir parça. Yine dergiler, süreli yayınlar, onun dışında fotoğraflar, negatifler. Ve burada özellikle sitede sağ tarafı içerikle ilgili sağ tarafı tıkladığınızda sağ tarafta aynı zamanda üretilen makaleler, dosyalar, çeşitli söyleşiler, dokümanlar yine aynı şekilde web sitesinden ulaşılabilir durumda. Dolayısıyla sadece bilgilerin derlenip toparlandığı, dijitalize edildiği bir arşivden bahsetmiyoruz aslında TSA'dan bahsederken. Bunun haricinde bir de bu toplanan içeriğin aynı zamanda özgün bir içeriğe dönüştürülmesi meselesi de var. Bu da bizim yine kurulurken başlıca amaçlarımızdan bir tanesiydi. Sadece fiziksel olarak malzemelerin yığıldığı, aynı zamanda bunların dijitalize edilerek kullanıcıya ulaştırıldığı bir arşivden söz etmiyoruz burada. Yine aynı şekilde web sitesinde özellikle yer alan bütün bilgilerin akademik ölçütlerde kaynakçaları sunuluyor. Bu Türk sineması özelinde değerlendirdiğimizde aslında önemli ve zor bir çaba. Bunun nedeni de filmlere ait bilgilerin net olmaması, farklı kaynaklarda, farklı şekillerde ifade edilmesi. Türk sinemasının geçmişten günümüze süregelen yapısal eksikliklerinin başında filmlerin bir kurum tarafından kayıt altına alınmaması geliyor. Filmlerin isimleri, jenerikleri, yapım şirketleri gibi temel bilgilere ulaşmak zor. Filmlerin İstanbul dışında Anadolu'nun diğer şehirlerinde gösterilirken farklı isimler alması, farklı afişlerin hazırlanması, yine özellikle yapım şirketlerinin video kaset ya da televizyon gibi kanallara filmlerini sattıktan sonra filmlerle ilgilenmemesi, jeneriklerin değişmesi, aynı filmlerin farklı isimlerle pazara sürülmesi ve çoğu zaman filmlerin orijinal kopyalarının mevcut olmayışı sorunları daha da derinleştiriyor. Zamanında faaliyet gösteren şirketlerin aile şirketleri oluşu ve kurumsallaşamaması nedeniyle arşivlerinin olmaması filmlere ulaşmayı zorlaştırıyor. Bütün bu nedenlerden dolayı Türk filmlerinin bilgileri önce filmin kendisine, sonra hak sahibine ve firmaya danışılarak daha sonra da farklı kaynaklardan karşılaştırılarak giriliyor. Şimdi bununla ilgili önümüzde aslında güzel bir örneğimiz var. Yine burada da Hababam sınıfına bakabiliriz. 1975 tarihli Hababam sınıfı şu anda faal olan bir şirketin önemli bir filmi. Ama yine Hababam sınıfına baktığımızda farklı afişlerle, farklı isimlerle, farklı yerlerde yeniden oynatıldığını görüyoruz. Dolayısıyla bu aynı zamanda mükerrer kayıtların da oluşmasına neden oluyor. Fakat daha büyük bir şey, bizim belki de veri tabanında karşılaştığımız en büyük zorluklardan bir tanesi Yılmaz Güney filmleri. Çünkü Yılmaz Güney demek aynı zamanda yapımcılar için eşittir para demek. O yüzden de Yılmaz Güney'in filmlerinin bir kısmında filmlerde kullanılmayan, atılmak için kenara ayrılan şutlar, kullanılmayan film parçalarından daha sonra yeniden farklı filmler üretiliyor. Dolayısıyla böyle bir yapının içinde hangisi gerçek film, hangisi sonradan üretilen film, hangisi aynı filmin farklı isimle yayınlanmış kopyası, bunları çözmek gittikçe zorlaşıyor. Bununla ilgili bizi çok zorlayan bir örnek mesela 1965 yılında Nuri Akıncı'nın çektiği Kasımpaşalı filmi. Nuri Akıncı Kılıç Film hesabına Kasımpaşalı filmini çekiyor Yılmaz Güney ile birlikte. Filmin başrolünde Evrim Fer yanılmıyorsam, yanında da Devlet Devrim var. 1965 yılında çekilen film daha sonra Anadolu'da Kabadayı Aşkı diye farklı bir isimle yeniden oynatılıyor. Fakat Nuri Akıncı filmi çekerken Yılmaz Güney'in aynı zamanda çok önemli bir gelir kapısı olduğunu farkında. Ve Yılmaz Güney filmde çalıştıktan sonra filmde kullanılmayan parçaları kenarda tutuyor. Bu sefer yanına yeni bir oyuncu olarak Selma Güner'i alıyor. Diğer figüranlarla birlikte 3-4 günlük daha iş koyuyor filme. Ve o 3-4 gün içinde Kasımpaşalı Recep diye aslında az önce gördüğümüz filmin devam filmi bir serial üretiyor. Dolayısıyla iç içe geçmiş iki tane filmden söz ediyoruz burada. Aslında oyuncular tek bir film parası alıyorlar. Fakat aynı yönetmen bir hafta içerisinde tek bir filmden 2 tane ayrı film üretiyor. Ve bu 2 ayrı filminde 2 tane ayrı ismi var, 2 tane ayrı afişi var. Dolayısıyla bu tür şeyler Türk sinemasında çok fazla var. Bu filmle ilgili biz 3-4 günümüzü aldı bu filmin hikayesini çözmek. Filmi izliyorsun tek tek kare kare, aynı olay örgüsü, aynı kostümler, aynı oyuncular. Fakat olay örgüsünde çok ufak bir değişiklik var iki filmde. Dolayısıyla belki de arşivlerde esas zorlu olan şeylerden biri de bu. Kutularda filmlerin farklı isimleri var ve kutuların yanında aynı zamanda filmlere ait farklı görseller var. Gazete küpürlerinden takip ettiğimizde de bu filmler farklı yerlerde, farklı isimlerle gösterime girmiş durumda. Fakat şimdi 4 ayrı film yerine aslında burada 2 tane film var ve o 2 film de tek bir filmden üretilmiş durumda. Şimdi bu tür meselelerde gerçekten işin içinden çıkmak çok zorlaşıyor. Biz bunu çözebilmek için aynı zamanda Abdurrahman Keskiner, Yılmaz Güney'in filmlerinin yapımcısı, A.G. Özgüç, Burçak Evren, Yılmaz Atadeniz pek çok kişiyle görüşüp onların kayıtlarını alıp daha sonra kendi içimizde tartışmamız gerekti. Bu 4 filmde aynı zamanda Türker İnanoğlu'nun afiş kitabında ayrı filmler olarak gözüküyor. Dolayısıyla bu tür bir kontrol etmeden aynı zamanda filmleri künyelemek de Türk sinemasında bir film enflasyonunun oluşmasına neden oluyor. Gerçek bilgilere ulaşmak çoğu zaman gerçekten uzun sürüyor, uzun süreçler alıyor. Yılmaz Güney belki de bunun en güzel örneklerinden bir tanesi. Daha sonrasında yine veri tabanımıza bu filmi girdikten sonra filmin altında notlar bölümünde filmin hikayesini de görebiliyorsunuz. Filme ait notlar da var. Ve bu da yine akademik ve bilimsel bir ölçütte kullanıcıya sunuluyor son evrede. Daha sonra bu filmdeki çalışmalardan sonra Yılmaz Güney'in gerçek bir filmografisi, gerçekten çektiği filmlerin sinopsisleri, bilgileri, afişlerin yer aldığı Burçak Evren'le birlikte bir kitap hazırladık. Bu kitabı da Adana Film Festivali bastı. Bu kitapta aslında daha sonrasında Yılmaz Güney çalışacak insanlar için bir nevi doğru bir kaynakça görevi görüyor. Bu kitap hazırlanırken de az önce bahsettiğim gibi Abdurrahman Keskiner, A.G. Özgüç, Abdullah Taş gibi Yılmaz Güney üzerine çalışan özel tarihçilerin, özel arşivcilerin koleksiyonlarından da yararlanıldı. Dolayısıyla bir bilgi aynı zamanda 4-5 farklı kaynaktan da çek edildi. Yani arşiv sadece oradaki künyelemeden ibaret değil aslında. O künyeleme faaliyetleri, bilgiyi çek etme meselesi daha sonrasında farklı yayınlarla birlikte tekrar devam ediyor. Tabii yine bizim arşivde özellikle öne çıkardığımız, önemsediğimiz meselelerden bir tanesi de filmlerin bilgilerinin yanı sıra filmlerle ilgili yayınlanan makaleler, filmler üzerine yapılan söyleşi ve tezler de filmlerle ilişkilendirilerek araştırmacıların kullanımına sunuluyor. Bu açıdan bakıldığında Internet Movie Database gibi film bilgilerinin paylaşıldığı web sitelerinden farklı olarak daha kompleks ve araştırmacının yaptığı araştırmayı derinleştirmesine ve yeni kaynaklara yönelmesine olanak sağlayan bir yapı da var. Bunun yanı sıra merkezin kendi binasında araştırmacıların film izleyebilecekleri ve araştırma yapabilecekleri bir film kütüphanesi de bulunuyor. Burada filmlerin yanı sıra yine kitaplara, süreli yayınlara, tezlere ve dokümanlara ulaşmak mümkün. Merkez ayrıca yine yıl içerisinde çeşitli gösterim, söyleşi, panel ve sempozyum gibi etkinlikler de hazırlayarak filmlerin dolaşıma sokulmasına ve insanlara ulaşmasına da bir nevi imkan tanıyor. Merkezin bağlı olduğu binada yine faaliyet gösteren Küre Yayınları aracılığıyla Türk sineması üzerine özgün kitaplar hazırlanarak literatüre katkı sağlaması da amaçlanıyor. Bütün bunların ötesinde sunumun son kısmında belki de daha teorik bir kısımla ilgili konuşmak gerekiyor. Dün biraz İnkristi de onunla bahsetti aslında. İnkristi'nin bahsettiği meseleyle alakalı olarak arşivin aslında biz ilk başta kurulurken, daha database hazırlanırken bir anlamda politik olduğunu fark ediyoruz. Bu da nereden ortaya çıkıyor? Bir filmi künyelerken sinema tarihi hangi filmle başlayacak? Aslında filmleri hiçbir ideoloji, herhangi bir bakış açısı olmadan arka arkaya dizme işleminden bahsediyoruz. Henüz kataloglama aşamasında. Fakat Türk sinemasının ilk filmi tartışmalı olduğu için 1914'teki Ayça Stefanos mu, 1907'deki Manaki kardeşler mi? Dolayısıyla veri tabanında ilk film hangisiyle başlıyorsa aslında bir nevi tarih yazımı ile alakalı bir konunun da içerisine girmiş oluyorsun. Aynı zamanda yine arşiv dediğimiz kısım sadece aynı zamanda belirli bir odada filmlerin kataloglanması, bir araya gelmesi ve dışarıdan gelen insanların o katalogdan bir film seçip izlemesi meselesinden öte bir de bu arşivdeki malzemelerin kullanıcıya sunulması meselesi var. Sonuçta arşivleri özellikle kendi ellerinde bulunduran kurumların hepsi temel olarak ellerindeki malzemeden bir şekilde kar elde etmek istiyorlar. Hiçbir kurum aslında elindeki malzemenin bir bodrum katında, bir kütüphanede durmasını istemiyor. Dolayısıyla bu arşiv malzemelerinin gösterilmesi, tanıtılması için de çeşitli kürasyonlara ihtiyaç var. Yıl içerisinde hazırlanan film seçkileri, film programları, web sitesinde öne çıkartılan içerikler, dolayısıyla bunların hepsinde aynı zamanda bir yayın yönetmenliğinden bahsediyoruz. İşin içine yayın yönetmenliği girdiğinde de dolayısıyla aslında bir tarih yazımının içinde oluyoruz. Her ne kadar kendimizi geri çekmeye çalışsak da bu konuda, mesela bizim belki de yapmaya çalıştığımız şeylerden biri de çoğu zaman şu oluyor. Bir filme web sitesinde bir filmin içeriğini girerken 2 defa değil 3-4 defa düşünüyoruz. Çünkü editörün seçimi dediğimiz şey, web sayfasında öne çıkan şey aynı zamanda belirli kanonlarla da bağlantılı. Biz her ne kadar Necdet Özür'ün kanonunu eleştirsek de aslında kendimiz de bir nevi bir kanon üretiyoruz. Dolayısıyla bu kanonlarda bir yerden sonra iş şuna dönüşüyor artık. Kendi ürettiğimiz veri tabanından kendimizi korumak için koruma mekanizmaları üretmek zorunda kalıyoruz. Mesela editörün seçimini ilk başta kendimiz yapıyorduk. Web sitesi içerik editörü olarak Türkan Şoray, Atıf Yılmaz, Lütfü Akat, Yılmaz Güney. Daha sonrasında şunu düşündük. Biz de aslında aynı kanonun öne çıkan isimlerini sürekli lansmanını yapıyoruz. Neden? Çünkü buna dair bir talep var. İnsanlar bu tür bir içerik bekliyorlar. Daha sonrasında mesela yine bu meseleyi belki de bir nasıl desem önüne geçmesi için editörün seçimini random hale getirmeye başladık. Bilgisayar olarak random olarak kitap, dergi vesaire içerik çıkartıyor. Ama günün sonunda en nihayetinde bir program ortaya çıkarttığımızda her zaman bu politik bakış açısı mecburen bu işin içinde oluyor. Dolayısıyla dün aslında Saadet Hanım'ın söylediği şey sadece yönetmenler için değil, arşivler için de geçerli. Yönetmenler nasıl kamerayı koydukları yerde aslında bir yere ışık yapıyorlarsa, bir yeri sadece seyirciye sunuyorlarsa arşiv çalışanları için de aynı şey geçerli. Evet, belki bütün arşivle ilgili çalışıyoruz ama en nihayetinde belirli bir yapı üzerinden o arşivdeki malzemeyi seyirciye ulaştırıyoruz. Dolayısıyla seyirciye ulaştırma işleminde işin içine seçim giriyor. Seçim girdiğinde de dolayısıyla o seçimi yapanların yaşadığı habitusunda ister istemez bu işin bir parçası haline geldiğini görüyoruz. Çok teşekkür ederim ben.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So we are going to continue with Nico de Klerk. Nico de Klerk is a film historical researcher, archivist and curator. And he received his archival on-the-job training at the Netherlands Film Museum, Film Museum. During his tenure as a collection researcher, he focused on the uncharted territories of film archiving and historiography, as in early non-fiction, colonial cinema, amateur film, moving image advertising. And he has finished his PhD at Utrecht University on the public activities of film heritage institutes. He created programs for both professional and non-professional publics. He is on the editorial board of the journals The Moving Image and Early Cinema in Review. And he has co-edited 3 volumes that came out of the international Amsterdam workshops he created. Non-fiction from the teens, Disorderly Order, Colors in Silent Film, and Uncharted Territory, essays on early non-fiction film. And the title of his presentation is Signifying Contexts.
Thank you for this introduction. Thank you for inviting me for this conference. I want to start my talk with a brief film, less than 3 minutes. I'll be talking, actually, half my talk is related to that film. Actually, on the first 5 shots or something, particularly the transitions between these shots, so maybe you can have a look at that, and then after that I'll be giving you my talk. I apologize for the big logo. Thank you. Yeah. So it's called Cowpox Vaccination in the Countryside. The vaccinator arrives. Vaccination. Afterwards. The end. Colonial Institute, Amsterdam. Okay. I'm afraid I'll be brief, and I also want to say this piece is rooted in my work at the archive when it was called Netherlands Film Museum, and I don't work there anymore. I think that's important to stress as well. Okay. So I'd like to use this short little film to address a few aspects implied by the theme of archives and forgetting. I will begin with a detailed discussion of a few of its shots and then gradually widen the perspective to matters regarding archival work, access to and reuse of its materials, and forgetting. This film, Cowpox Vaccination in the Countryside, was part of a series of propaganda and information films commissioned by the Colonial Institute in Amsterdam. For the making of these films, a Mr. Lamster, an army captain in a division of the Engineer Corps in the colonial Indonesian army, was hired while he was on leave in Holland in 1911. After being sent to Pâté Frères in Paris for a crash course in filmmaking, Lamster and his family returned to the colony, where they lived actually, in February 1912. With them sailed a Pâté cameraman, Octave Collet, who had been hired for 6 months, after which time Lamster was supposed to be able to do the job by himself. Filming took place between the spring of 1912, the earliest reference I found in digitized newspapers was from April 1912, and the last that I found was from April 1913. So far, the information that I just gave you is already relevant for understanding one aspect of this particular digitized print of the film. Because what is striking compared to many other titles in this particular collection is the jump within the second shot to a camera position closer to the people passing in front of it. This so-called cut-in, incidentally, was not an unknown stylistic option at the time. One can also see it in contemporary and probably also earlier sets of magic lantern slides, although its motivation may have been different. But it is rather unusual in this collection of films in which a tableau style, as it is called in fiction films, dominates. That is to say that actions and movements are followed continuously until they come to an end or move to another space. In fact, at the time, this way of filming was the default mode of industrials, travelogues and many other non-fiction films. This cut-in, this change of position was made in the camera, but at a later point, I assume, either or both of these shots were shortened and then joined again by splicing. On that basis, I assume, furthermore, that the two nitrate positives at the Amsterdam archive that were input for the preservation that you saw must belong to a next generation of prints. Because in both one can spot a copied splice, a white horizontal line just below the upper frame line. But whether made in the camera or on an editing table, the jump to a closer position of the same scene reflects a more lively concept of the topic to be filmed. And in this way we might see the hand of a professional cameraman, an employee of the then cutting-edge film company Pathé Frères. It also means, incidentally, that a Heritage Institute can then arguably date the making of the film before September 1912, when the French cameraman's contract ended. Now one may be tempted to see this livelier and in this case composite approach to a topic confirmed in the transition from shot 3 to shot 4. We see the vaccinator in shot 3 arrive. He walks towards the camera that pans along with him until he exits screen right. In shot 4, he is picked up again as he enters screen left. What we see here then is an even more unusual instance of continuity editing, not just in this collection, but also in non-fiction filmmaking around 1910 in general. However, I seriously doubt that the copied splice between these two shots reflects the same degree of intentionality as the transition I just discussed. After all, in the first example, both the wide shot and the cut-in show the same location at the same action less than a minute apart. The barber has just finished cutting the hair of the customer we saw in the wider shot. But the transition between shots 3 and 4 is less solid. If there was any intentionality, we have to look for it elsewhere. For this we need more information that the print, or this particular print, cannot give us. In fact, none of the surviving nitrate prints that form the input for the preservation you saw contains that information either. The two positive nitrate prints I mentioned, as well as one nitrate duplicate negative, are all that is left of what is loosely called original materials. And I say loose because during my inspection in 2009 and 2010 of all the remaining nitrate materials of this collection, hardly any element could be dated back to 1912 or 1913. In other words, there were no real originals. What I did find was that parts of the duplicate negative consisted of Kodak film stock made in 1923. The two positives could not be identified precisely, but as they measured the same length and contained the same number of shots that copied some of the negatives' physical characteristics, I think they can be safely dated around that same year. More affirmative information about these dates comes from the film's paratexts, the Colonial Institute's film catalogues and what remains of its business papers. From the latter, we learn that in 1918 the films were being colored, initially in its endeavor to avoid any association with the cheap amusements of cinema theaters, The Colonial Institute rented films in black and white and exclusively to what we now call non-theatrical venues such as schools, universities, museums, associations, colonial expositions, etc. The two nitrate positive prints I mentioned, though, are both in color, while the negative contains leader film with color instructions for the lab scratched in it. The information in the catalogues is even more relevant. The Colonial Institute published three catalogues of its film collection in 1914, in 1918 and in 1923. Comparison shows that the films were constantly recut, rearranged and retitled. Some titles were dropped, scenes of one film were included in another, or conversely were separated and listed under a title of their own. As a result, there is hardly a title that has not undergone changes in length compared with the preceding edition of the catalogue. Moreover, filmed photographs, maps or drawings from the Institute's collections were inserted in order to highlight details or show aspects that have not been recorded satisfyingly or at all. As well, about 1,000 meters of probably unreleased footage that was bought from Pathé Frères, clips of which were inserted too in various films. Just, excuse me, my mouth is dry, so I need to... These invasive measures could be quite drastic. The film we just saw, for instance, changed from 150 meters in the 1914 catalogue to 110 meters in the 1918 edition to just 45 meters in the 1923 edition. 45 meters is also almost identical to the length of all the three remaining nitrate materials I mentioned. The slight differences between them emerge because of the length of leader film or intertitles. So, rather than having survived the cuts and permutations that the Colonial Institute applied, it is, I think, far more likely that this apparently unique instance of continuity editing was actually created accidentally by the removal of one or more intermediate shots that may have shown other parts of the vaccinator's walk. The precise intention behind this type of invasive measure, which was frequently applied, cannot be retrieved with any certainty. Possibly they were adjusted after feedback from the audience, from the people or the audience or their audiences who lectured with these films. Lectures were obligatory. Or they were changed to remove dead time and speed things up a bit. But one thing seems certain, it was not to introduce a new type of shot transition. So why talk so long about all these little details? For one thing, by not pointing out, whenever relevant, these inaccessible materials and invisible physical aspects, one obstructs the film's appreciation and understanding. You don't want people to leave your premises saying something like, the Leicester collection contains an early instance of continuity editing. But this particular type of knowledge of the history of film style is actually just one instance of Film Heritage Institute's role as a pivot between archiving the forgotten and forgetting the archive. Let me begin to explain this with a quote from Canadian archivist Laurie Podolsky. Quote, "A document is more than its subject content and the context of its original creation. Throughout its life cycle, it continually evolves, acquiring additional meanings and layers, even after crossing the archival threshold." Unquote. Podolsky has termed these additional layers of context and meaning secondary provenance. The archival term provenance refers to the entity that creates or receives items in a collection, or items of a collection. The relevant entities in my particular story are, to keep it simple, the filmmaker, the commissioning institute, and the Heritage Institute, where the films are now stored. Ideally, the role of the last institute, the archive, the last entity, the archive, differs from the other two. Because during its appraisal of incoming archival material, It applies the principle of provenance as a guideline for evaluating these materials on the basis of the creator's mandates and functions. These creators, in our case the Colonial Institute, on the other hand, are free to do with their materials as they see fit, and the Colonial Institute certainly did that. This, as we've seen, happened at the Colonial Institute with its invasive measures and changes of policy, from black and white to colored prints, for instance. Later, it also permitted a Dutch commercial filmmaker to compile its materials in a rather exoticizing documentary for release in cinema theaters. But with these decisions, the Institute created or allowed the creation of new contexts for new audiences and new meanings. It is such practical decisions and measures that makes a creator forget the archive, that is to say, its own archive. Only when its materials serve no practical, ideological and or commercial purpose anymore, they often are discarded, if you're lucky, to a heritage institute, which may then sort out the layers of context, meaning or purpose. There, inside the Film Heritage Institute, another element of provenance becomes relevant, namely that the arrangement and description of these materials should be directly related to their original purpose and function. That is why 1923 is such a crucial, perhaps controversial date. Because during my inspection of the materials, to date, that is actually the last comprehensive inventory of these materials, I concluded that there was no point to stick to the Colonial Institute's initial plans, as there was not enough material in support of that. I therefore recommended to take the catalogue of 1923 as a reference point, as more nitrate materials complied with the lengths and the colouring listed in that edition than with the other two. My proposal implied not only that all new safety prints should be coloured, but also that some of them would be shorter than the available nitrate material, always a sore spot for archivists. Mine was, in fact, the third attempt in a period of almost 30 years to preserve the Colonial Institute film collection for presentation and access purposes. Just a while back, I said that the role of the Heritage Institute is ideally different from that of document or record creators. But this example shows that reality often disrupts ambition, because now this collection exists in black and white 60mm reduction prints, in black and white 35mm and, albeit still uncompleted, in 35mm color prints. Available budget, requests from outside parties, increased knowledge, ethical considerations among others determine such decisions. You might say that the work of this Heritage Institute, just like the Colonial Institute, created its own layers of context and meaning. But let us assume that, again, according to the principle of provenance, the arrangement and description of these materials, it's longer than I thought, and description of these materials has been satisfactorily related to their original, or one of their original purposes. It is immediately after that when forgetting sets in again, because the moment films are preserved, presented on screen and online, and available, it's people like Gustav Deutsch come knocking on the door, or a picture researchers for a TV documentary, or an advertising agency for a commercial. This is what happens on a daily basis at the Film Heritage Institute of some stature and size. In fact, nowadays this knocking on the door is encouraged by Film Heritage Institute's digital channels on YouTube or elsewhere. As a matter of fact, these displays make wonderful promotional material, even though they may not have been intended that way. This is where filmmakers, companies and picture researchers may find the stuff they need without being bothered too much by history or even by knowledge. This is, you might say, one way of returning to the public what the public has made possible, the creation of an institute with a mandate to collect, preserve, present and research a particular administrative unit of which a film heritage has that mandate. Admittedly, from an archival point of view, I find that such channels fail in their potentiality. Yet on the other hand, from the public's perspective, it provides an unbiased service and I abstract here from copyright issues, because one client might want to use the film I showed you to argue the beneficence of Dutch colonial rule around the turn of the 20th century, during the era of the so-called ethical policy, according to which the welfare of the local population, their health and education, was to be put before profit. Another user might use the same film to argue that despite such educational opportunities, only the most routine types of job were offered to the indigenes, such as being a vaccinator. And yet another, of course, might want to demonstrate that Lamster was the inventor of continuity editing. This, of course, will inevitably lead to instances of what you might call tertiary provenance, the layers and meanings added to the material once it leaves the archive. Again, final paragraph. But in all this, it becomes a Film Heritage Institute, certainly a public one, to act with reserve and impartiality, like any public institute, I hope. Apart from refusing requests for materials by obvious enemies of the public, an archive is no arbiter of taste, nor a sentinel of sense-making. It is paid by the public and serves the public, but that comes with an important pivotal task, to make sure that between subsequent instances of archival amnesia, a Heritage Institute makes sure that all these layers of history, all these additional meanings and context are researched, retrieved, preserved and made available with authority. That, I trust, is the basis of the trust it should receive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And our final speaker is Peter Kramer. He is a senior research fellow in cinema and television in the Leicester Media School at the Monfort University. He is also a senior fellow in the School of Art, Media and American Studies at the University of East Anglia, as well as a regular guest lecturer at Masaryk University in Czech Republic and at the University of Television and Film Munich. He is the author or the editor of 9 academic books, including 2 BFI Film Classics volume on Dr. Strangelove and 2001 A Space Odyssey. He also co-edited 1 volume on Clockwork Orange and the Stanley Kubrick New Perspectives. And today he is gonna talk on research in the Stanley Kubrick archive.
Thank you. I just want to thank my very good old friend Nezzy Elwan for inviting me to this event. And this great city, of course. And I was reminded, not so much actually here in Beirut, but when we went to the islands and things like that, I was reminded how wonderful this city and its surroundings are. So I really appreciate getting these invitations. Now, speaking on the last day of a conference, of course, you realize that virtually everything you could possibly say has been said before and probably better. But instead of trying to improvise something on the spot, which I don't trust myself to do, I will stick to my script, and so you will hear things that you've heard before, but perhaps these things are worth hearing more than once. When I started studying film in the early to mid-1980s, first at the University of Cologne in Germany, and then being taught mainly by Thomas Elsasser and Charles Barr at the University of East Anglia in the UK, VHS and Betamax had made a wide range of films available for close examination on videotape in the comfort of one's home or of a university library. Now this was a vast improvement on the situation film scholars had been confronted with in earlier decades, when film analysis had mainly depended on taking notes during a rare cinema screening or television broadcast, or on visits to far-flung archives. In addition, it should be noted, however, that a selection of films have been available to buy or rent on small gauge formats for home projection. I think Bill Everson was known for having this extraordinary collection of 8, especially 60mm films at home, and he educated people like Charles Master in his home by showing them all these wonderful films that he had collected. So it was possible before video to collect films for close examination at home. Yet after even the spread of video in the 1980s, historically minded film students such as myself tended to spend a fair amount of time in archives to watch films that were hardly ever shown in cinemas or on television and were available neither on video nor on Laserdisc. And what I want to emphasize here, this could be quite mainstream films. You know, these are, I'm not talking about going into the archive to look at completely obscure things, but some of these things would be completely mainstream, and you virtually had never had a chance to see them unless you went to an archive. So I just give you a few examples, both the mainstream and the more obscure. I remember paying for the projection. That was quite exciting. I was sitting in MoMA, they had a little screening room, and I paid, I don't know, $10 or something, to have an early Buster Keaton sound film projected to me at MoMA in their archive in New York. Also, I watched bad boy films of the late 1890s and early 1900s on the viewing table in the cellar of the British Film Institute in London. Luckily, of course, there were also events such as the Silent Film Festival in Pordenone, Italy, which screened a wide range of movies, otherwise only available in archives. In the 1990s, when I researched Audrey Hepburn's early career, I could only examine her first film appearance in 2 versions of an Anglo-Dutch comical documentary. You have to get your head around this. Audrey Hepburn's first film, an Anglo-Dutch comical documentary in 2 archives in the Netherlands. I watched both of them. And I watched some of her rarely shown early features where she has very minor roles in the British Film Institute. In the first decade of the new millennium, I was very proud when, after participating in an event celebrating the 30th anniversary of the release of Star Wars in George Lucas's hometown, Modesto, California, I received a specially prepared DVD featuring most of Lucas's student films directly from Lucasfilm's own archive. I was so proud. And then I realized there was such a thing as YouTube. Of course, most of the kind of material that I was looking at in archives then is now available freely on YouTube and other websites, including websites put up by film archives, or on DVDs and Blu-rays. Notwithstanding the fact that easy digital access to the films of the past is by no means comprehensive today, it is certainly the case that writing the kind of film history which is based on detailed and systematic textual analyses has become so much easier than it used to be. In fact, scholars may now have the problem that instead of not being able to get hold of the films they want to see, their research is complicated by the fact that the enormous number of films easily accessible to them is actually overwhelming. So it might be the opposite problem, that when the stuff didn't used to be available, now too much is available. So a terrifying thing challenges the arts and humanities scholar, methodology, which is something we're not very good at. You know, if all these films are available, how do you choose the ones you want to analyze? And of course, Serkan gave us a very good example of how you deal with these kinds of problems, what kind of methods you might use yesterday. So I think there might have been a reversal of problematics for film historians, because the wealth of material brings along with it the challenge to actually, you know, make use of it systematically. But how do you do that? Now, there's also the question, and I don't want to be cynical at all, but there is the question whether in intellectual and career terms it is in fact worth spending much time on what may be regarded as very obscure films. I think that is an important, because we're all thinking, we're sitting at this conference and that the world is like we see it, that, you know, all these obscure films are of great interest to everyone, and of course the research into these films should be funded, and people who do that research well should be rewarded with jobs in academia. I think this may be naive. I think that film studies as an academic discipline seems to be, and English language academic publishing in this field certainly is, quite happy to focus much of its efforts on a relatively small canon, with an absolutely endless stream of publications on, for example, the work of Alfred Hitchcock or Stanley Kubrick, on film noir, and one of my favorites, the Alien movies. The amount of Alien analysis is absolutely astonishing. And there's yet another conference coming up, organized by good friends of mine. So don't knock Alien scholars, some of them are my good friends. At this point I have to plead guilty, because I am more responsible than most people, maybe all people, for the recent glut of English language publications on Kubrick. Because I've contributed 3 short monographs, a huge co-edited collection, and dozens of journal essays, book chapters, magazine articles, and blog posts. Now, with a vast majority of now easily available films, ranging from some early kinetoscope movies to recent massively popular YouTube videos, never having been written about at all. It's there, it has never been written about at all. In the face of that reality, I have to ask myself whether it is really a good use of my or anyone's time and energy to add to the tens of thousands of scholarly pages already written about Kubrick's 13 feature films and his 3 surviving documentary films. I mean, I have to ask myself that question. How could you possibly justify? You know, there might be YouTube videos which have been seen by 1 billion people, and there I am, adding to the tens of thousands of pages written about Stanley Kubrick. I will try to come up with something. I will fail miserably probably, but I will try. Okay, now, my justification might begin by pointing out that Kubrick's early shorts and his first 2 features haven't actually been discussed very extensively. That's an easy defense. There's very little writing about that. And the fact that there are indeed 2 different versions of Kubrick's very first film. I mean, this is one of the key filmmakers in history. The very first film has 2 different versions. It's a documentary called Day of the Fight from 1951. That fact that there are 2 different versions is usually ignored altogether. So there's certainly something new to be said here. That's the start of my defense. But of course, this is not what I've actually focused on. My writing has not been about a very careful comparison of the 2 versions of Kubrick's first film. Instead, of course, my writing concerns the most thoroughly analyzed of all Kubrick films, indeed possibly the most thoroughly analyzed entry in the whole film studies canon, 2001: A Space Odyssey from 1968. What can any new analysis really add to the thousands of pages that have already discussed the film's form, style, and themes? See, I'm setting myself challenges.
Yeah, I'm waiting.
Yeah. Now, one response to this question could be what one might call the Hamlet defense.
Never heard of it.
Despite what are surely already hundreds of thousands, see, I'm varying the tens of thousands, the thousands and the hundreds of thousands. Despite what are surely already hundreds of thousands of pages discussing Shakespeare's play, literary and drama scholars do not seem to feel inhibited when it comes to new interpretations of Hamlet. So why should film scholars not go on analyzing 2001: A Space Odyssey? I mean, if it works for literature, surely we're entitled to do the same, unless you want to challenge literature, which you're free to do. Another possible answer, which is more intriguing from an archival point of view, could be derived from a film archival discovery. It is well known that Kubrick cut about 19 minutes from the version of 2001: A Space Odyssey, which was initially shown to the press and to general audiences in early April 1968. Not many details are known about the material cut from the film, and it has never been shown in public since April 1968, although it is reported to have survived and to be part of the Kubrick estate. One might have hoped that when the Kubrick estate became the basis for the Stanley Kubrick Archive, which was opened at the University of the Arts London in 2007, this film material would have been included, thus allowing scholars for the first time to reconstruct and analyze the original version of 2001. Alas, this is not so. And I therefore can't easily justify my discussions of the film through revelations about its original version. See, my defense is not going well.
That's why I didn't say anything.
Okay, it was so obvious. At this point, I should probably restate a very obvious observation. Film studies is more than just film analysis. Indeed, when the so-called new film history took off in the late 1970s, its practitioners called not only for a turn to film archives, so as to closely examine or re-examine a wide range of films, especially from the medium's early decades. They also demanded a thorough contextualization of these films. Which technologies, companies and people were involved in their production, where did the aesthetic norms shaping them originate, and what kind of source material did the filmmakers adapt? How were the films presented to the public? Who was the audience, and how did it respond to film screenings? To answer these questions, film historians turned to document archives, many of which had nothing directly to do with movies, while others specifically collected material about the production, marketing, exhibition and reception of films. During the last 30 years, I have spent a lot of time in such document archives in the United States, United Kingdom, Germany and the Netherlands. And for the last decade, the main center of my archival research has been the Stanley Kubrick Archive in London. Of course, in addition to actual archives, I've also made use of reprints of primary print sources in libraries and of the wealth of archival documents now available on the internet. When I first started my work on Kubrick in the late 1990s, I was surprised to find that, with few exceptions, the scholarly literature on his films proceeded without any reference to primary print sources, except perhaps for the occasional film review or published interview with the director or the source novels for his films. So all these thousands of pages, actually, there was virtually no references to primary print sources. While Kubrick's two biographers extensively used a wide range of primary print sources, film scholars tended to focus on analyzing the films, often making claims about the filmmaker's intentions or the critical reception of his films without providing much evidence in support of these claims. So when you say a film was negatively received, you quote two reviews and that's it. Which maybe, if you were to explain that they were representative of the 100 reviews you looked at, would be okay. But usually you just get the two reviews, so you don't know. You have no idea. Now, you could say, well, the stuff wasn't available. Well, it was. Even before the opening of the Stanley Kubrick Archive in 2007, treatments and scripts for Kubrick's films, correspondence with the filmmaker, large collections of film reviews and newspaper articles about Kubrick, press books, posters and trailers for his films, as well as box office data, were widely available, both within and outside archives. But they did not seem to be of much interest for most academics writing about Kubrick. In the last 10 years, however, the Kubrick Archive has attracted a large number of scholars, not just in film studies, but also in other disciplines. And there has been an explosion of Kubrick essays and books based on extensive archival research. At the same time, it has to be noted, the number of Kubrick publications focusing on film analysis and doing so without reference to many or indeed any primary print sources has probably increased as well. So I want to make this clear. It is not that everyone is using all this archival material now, because the non-archive-based writing about Kubrick is exploding as well. So it's not that an old tradition has been replaced at all. And I'm not implying that it should be. I'm not making that. I just want to make it clear that there is an explosion of archive-based work on Kubrick, but the other forms of engagement with his films continue as well. Of course, many Kubrick scholars, including myself, aim to combine the thematic, formal and stylistic analysis of his films with archival research into their production, marketing, exhibition and or reception. It is this combination which I would hope can justify my own contributions to the scholarly debate about 2001: A Space Odyssey and the rest of Kubrick's oeuvre. So that's ultimately my defense. Now, I don't want to recount in detail how archival research has begun to reshape our understanding of Kubrick's work, but I do want to highlight several research strands that I think may have implications for film historiography more generally. Now, first of all, I can report that my whole approach to 2001: A Space Odyssey was gradually transformed when I read the many dozen letters regular cinema-goers had written to Kubrick in the late 1960s and early 1970s about their experiences with his film. Most letter writers responded very positively to 2001 and saw in it a message of hope. And this in turn provided me with a very new perspective on the film's protracted production history, its marketing, its themes and form, and what turned out, after some research, to be actually its enormous instant box office success. So I took that from the letters. The letters gave me a whole new perspective of thinking about the film. And then the subsequent research revealed that that thinking about the film was actually immensely productive for understanding the film itself and its original impact. In fact, the Kubrick Archive contains fan letters of this kind about several of his films, as well as reports on test screenings and other material on the exhibition and audiences of his films. Similar materials can also be found in other archives. For example, I vividly remember reading in the Special Collections department at UCLA the hate mail the producer and character Stanley Kramer, no relation, received both before and after his interracial marriage drama, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, came out in 1968. So everyone who writes about that film saying, well, interracial marriage was not an issue anymore, it was not a progressive film, they should read this hate mail. There were certain corners where this was very much an issue. And of course, Stanley Kramer being Jewish added to the absolute hatred that exploded. And I also read the many thoughtful letters that Stanley Kramer received after organizing invitation-only pre-release screenings for his nuclear drama On the Beach in 1959. Now, these kind of anecdotes, examples, may serve as a reminder that there is a lot of scope for historical audience research, which asks on the basis of contemporary sources from the time which we're investigating, rather than on the basis of later memories, how people engage with particular films at the time of their original release. And I know that we have talked a lot about more audience-focused film studies, and we have talked a little bit about oral histories and things like that, but there is a wealth of material in film archives and elsewhere in order to reconstruct how people engage with films at the time when they were first released. So you can use sources from the time. And I think that's got greater potential than we often are perhaps aware of. Another important area of research into Kubrick's work focuses on the often long drawn out and very complex production histories of his movies. The Stanley Kubrick archive contains an extraordinary amount of material on the many ideas Kubrick generated for possible movies, the research he and his collaborators carried out for them, the story development process, as well as all aspects of pre-production, the shooting of the films and their post-production. With the help of this material, it is possible to reconstruct Kubrick's decision-making with regards to what projects to work on and how to realize them, and also his interaction with collaborators. Importantly, Katrina McAvoy has identified what she calls Kubrick's exploratory approach to filmmaking. Rather than making up his mind early on about what shape a particular film should take, Kubrick actually tended to explore with his collaborators a wide range of possible options at each stage of the production process, from story selection and development to post-production. He was perfectly willing to make decisions which dramatically reshaped a particular project at any stage during the process, even during post-production. His work on 2001 being a particularly extreme example for this. Of course, Kubrick was also known to abandon film projects he had been working on altogether, the most notorious example being his Napoleon biopic. In fact, Filippo Oliveri has compiled a list of dozens of film ideas that Kubrick had considered at one point or another. For some of these, we only have a brief press report or interview statement. For others, we can examine a wealth of materials on research, story development, and pre-production in the Kubrick archive and in other archival collections. This, of course, begins to answer one of the questions Kubrick scholars have always been grappling with. What was this obviously extremely dedicated filmmaker spending his time on during the last 27 years of his life when he made only 4 movies? I mean, if you're such a great filmmaker, such a dedicated filmmaker, what do you do all this time when you have 4 movies in 27 years? Well, amongst other things, it turns out he worked on projects that were never realized. And such work on unrealized project on Kubrick's part also characterizes, in fact, when you do the digging, the first 20 years of his film career, when he made a new feature on average every 2 years, but he had 4 other projects on the go that never got realized. Behind the fairly slim Kubrick oeuvre of 13 features and 3 shorts, therefore, we can discern a shadow history of dozens of films he might have made, unfinished projects that he often invested considerable amounts of time, money and creativity in. Now, in this regard, the Kubrick case study has, I think, interesting implications for film historiography that Nezich already addressed in his opening address when he kindly quoted from an article I recently published. Isn't it the case that for each film being made, say in Hollywood, there are dozens of film projects that were discontinued during or shortly after pre-production, and hundreds of projects that never went beyond the story development stage at all? In fact, film companies and producers have always invested a considerable amount of money in projects that were never realized. And screenwriters have certainly invested more time and creativity in developing scripts that were never filmed than in those that resulted in actual movies. So to understand the screenwriting profession, one has to think about unrealized projects much more than about the ones that get realized, because they take up a tiny amount of the time of a scriptwriter's working life. Therefore, I want to end this talk, which began with some reflection on the role of film archives and domestic delivery systems, such as video in film studies, with the suggestion that perhaps the discipline has so far been too focused on the relatively few films that actually get made, largely ignoring the enormous work that went into the development of the much larger number of projects that were never realized. With the help of document archives and oral histories, film historians are able to investigate much of this work, thus writing a kind of shadow history of cinema. A good starting point for our thinking about this topic might be David Eldridge, James Fenwick and Kieran Foster's forthcoming edited collection Shadow Cinema, the historical and production context of unmade films. And beyond this collection there will no doubt be further interesting research to be carried out on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nico. Thank you all for this great panel. Actually, the panel started a bit late, but still we had some time for some questions and comments. Anyone who would like to?
My question is for both Barış and Nico. And I would like to actually, and this might be a little too early to ask for the, for you to answer now, but I was wondering if, similar to the case of perhaps Soviet montage movement, which was, even loosely sort of affected by this re-editing processes of the American films. I was wondering if, in Barış's case, we see this sort of commercial purpose for the re-editions, and in Nico's case, we see this colonial purpose for the re-editing, and I was wondering if we can, come to any, not good conclusions, but if there are any sort of consequences, if we can see any consequences of this re-involvement, re-engagements, in these films. Can we talk about any, aesthetically or, reception-wise, anything that might be sort of better to talk about?
Aesthetically, actually, I'm skeptical, because let me first say, I think it's very difficult to focus on a film as a title. I think it's, even though that's not always possible, but at least you have to be aware of different versions, not just within one country, as in Turkey, through all kinds of re-releases for all kinds of different reasons. But also to, when films are exported, when they are bought by foreign distributors, they undergo, almost as a necessity, they undergo changes. It's what I call appropriation. So there's a legal reason, like censorship, for instance, although nowadays that is less of a common reason in many countries. There's a very practical reason, translation, but there's also considerations of marketing and publicity and programming, choosing a venue. Is there a tie-in with other products? Is there a publicity campaign? That sort of stuff. So there is not only a totally different context, but there may also be a totally different, there may be a different print. Although I have the impression, after having worked for quite a while in the film archive, that you see that more with silent films than with sound films, obviously, because that's removing sound or interrupting sound is, of course, much more noticeable than changing frames or changing scenes around in a silent film. So aesthetically, I don't think that is a fruitful way to operate. What was your other suggestion?
No, it wasn't a suggestion. It was just, if you see anything perhaps that's more pleasant, that might come out of all this sort of otherwise
in my
You know,
opinion,
not so
my talk
yeah.
and Barish's were more or less about the same thing, although with a totally different approach and maybe a totally different emphasis. Because you know, I had at one time the privilege of having the prints. I could use the prints and I could access them from the archive because I worked there. In your case, it was slightly different, but I think fundamentally it leads away from, say, the title or the one print that you may have known or that you may have available, because there are many more. That's why it's also, I think, so difficult to write all these analyses, or maybe that creates actually this multitude of analyses. Anyway.
Aslında böyle bir şey hani özellikle Türkiye şartlarında bilmiyorum nasıl böyle bir şey çıkartabiliriz bundan. Çünkü tamamen illegal bir şeyden bahsediyoruz. Hiçbir şekilde herhangi bir şey tutulmamış. Hiçbir şekilde eğitim yok. Tamamen aslında usta-çırak ilişkisiyle her şey gerçekleşiyor. Dolayısıyla geçen gün Serkan'la da konuşuyorduk bunu. Yani bu tür bir şeyi matematiğe belki Hollywood gibi standart film üretilen bir şeyde oturtabiliriz ama Türk sinemasında bunu ne kadar oturtabiliriz ya da oradaki plan uzunlukları, estetik tercihler, Metin Erksan'ın montaj algısı, bunlarda ne kadar yönetmenin etkisi var, ne kadar aslında stüdyonun etkisi var, son söz sahibi kimde. Dolayısıyla bu tür şeyler çok tartışmalı olduğu için belki ortak bir şey bulmak da o yüzden zorlaşıyor. Bizim işimizin de en büyük zorluğu belki de o. Aslında kanonlar belli bir şey üretiyorlar. Bizim itirazımız da bunun bu şekilde gerçekleşmediği, fakat kırılmalar o kadar çok ki, özellikle 60 sonrasında. Kırılmalar çok fazla olduğu için de aslında tam olarak hani senin söylediğin tarzda bir şeye belki karşılık bulmak çok zorlaşıyor Türk sineması özellikle. Ama 90 sonrasında dediğine dair daha net veriler belki ortaya koymak mümkün. Ama 80 öncesinde 60-80 arasında bu oldukça zor. Çünkü çok illegal bir şeyden bahsediyoruz, kayıt dışı her şey ve herkesin aslında kendi kafasına göre, kendi stüdyodaki algısına göre gayri ahlaki, gayri resmi olarak ilerleyen bir şeyden bahsediyoruz. O yüzden onu standartlaştırmak ya da estetik bir şey üzerinde okumak oldukça zor.
I might be able to say something about this as well. I mean, Joseph Gantarz has worked a lot about systematic or significant film variation. It means exactly what you mentioned, that especially with commercially important films, they often will be cut for releases of different countries, not for censorship reasons, but for commercial reasons. Because, you know, if you want to release in the 50s a film, a Hollywood film which, you know, is about the Second World War and has some, you know, really nasty Nazis in it, you might want to take them out. You know, so notorious, you know, they're not Nazis anymore, they're heroin smugglers or something. So you know, he has developed a methodology for how do you first of all establish that this significant film variation is taking place, and what kind of documents can you use to actually really demonstrate the causal chain that leads to this particular variation. So I think there are methodologies out there, and I think Sheldon Hall is now about to publish a book about films on television, and he is an absolutely cinephile. He's an absolute cinephile, and I think he started the book to really rubbish films ever having been shown on television before widescreen and home cinema had come along. But I think he changed his mind, because obviously we realized that most people have seen most films on television since the 50s in the United States. They might not have been up-to-date films in the 50s, but they saw more film material on television than they saw ever in the cinema. So you have to confront the fact that films on television look very different. Not just the screen size, but you know, which ratio is used, what editing took place to make, you know, to time it for the advertising slots and everything. So I'm quite looking forward to this book, because it's an aspect. And even someone like Kubrick, you get this curious thing that Kubrick shot, except for 2 films, I think, everything on Academy ratio, and he actually thought that that was the full picture. But unfortunately, cinema being what it is, you had to show films in widescreen, so you had to take stuff off at the bottom and the top of the image. You had to take things away from the full image. So when these films were shown on television or video and later DVD, as long as he lived, he insisted that they had to be shown 4:3. They had to be shown the full, not these widescreen films, you know, the anamorphic films, not those. All the other films were supposed to be shown on 4:3. So a film like Eyes Wide Shut looks significantly different when you see it in widescreen, which is the smaller image. Then when you see the full image, it looks significantly different from a compositional, aesthetic point. So I think it's an extraordinarily wide field.
I just wanted to pick up something from what Peter was saying. I was absolutely on Peter's side, cheering him on when he was complaining about the pile of books and articles. The overwritten subjects of film studies. I personally think film studies has been pretty much an academic disaster. And I speak as one of those who was in at the beginning. And I'm not a great enthusiast for it at all. It has largely avoided answering the big questions, or even posing the big questions, and gone for very easy material. But there is one thing I want to add, and I was a little surprised you didn't touch on this, perhaps because of shortage of time. I don't really think we need a lot of books on films that weren't made. I mean, I've contributed somewhat to the literature of what was not made myself, but it's a limited field, I think, because we know that it vastly exceeds what was made. What does need attention is that which was made and has disappeared. And what deforms many histories of cinema is a total lack of reference to what was definitely made, seen, appreciated, loved, but no longer exists, so it's simply passed over. I mean, that's certainly true of the history of British cinema, it's true of the history of most national cinemas. What has disappeared? What did definitely exist? And we do have the tools now to reconstruct this. One of my students has just written a magnificent PhD on the work of Maurice Elvey. Maurice Elvey was the most important British director in the teens. All his teens films have disappeared except for one that was accidentally discovered many years later, the life story of David Lloyd George. When you see how important he was, you realise that the whole middle history of British cinema needs to be rewritten. And it can be done, because we do have the resources to reconstruct at least the impact of those films. The guy I've been working on, Robert Paul, has been written out of early film history for various reasons, one of which is the absence of 90% of his films. But I think this is a real issue, and that's what I would say. We've talked about real history. We had several discussions yesterday about real history as opposed to fake history. And I think the real historical challenge is to write about that which we know existed, but which there are no material or visible traces of. That would make us more like real historians and less like people riding along on the crest of pop history.
Well, I agree with you, but obviously it depends on what questions you ask. So if you ask, what is, in the public imagination, what is a scriptwriter? What are the ambitions of regular people in relation to the process of scriptwriting? How do scriptwriters get into the profession? What do scriptwriters spend most of their time with? If you ask those questions, actual films have nothing to do with it. But it depends on what questions you ask. There's the joke that in certain parts of Santa Monica and Beverly Hills, if you stop a random person in the street and said, "How's your script going?" they won't say, "What?" They will say, "Well, I have problems in the second act." That's what they will say. And I have heard recently that there are parts of Istanbul where the same happens. So if you ask questions about scriptwriting as an activity or as an imaginary, the actual films have little to do with it, but the kind of unmade projects, the dreams, the scribblings, the endless sitting in coffee bars and typing your script, that's really the nature of the social history of scriptwriting. So it all depends on, what you're asking.
I can't resist answering that, Peter. I'll tell you, one of the answers to your point is, sorry Nico, is just that, what do you do if your university is in economic trouble? You launch a scriptwriting course. There is no limit to the number of people who want to throw money at turning themselves into potential scriptwriters.
So it comes full circle. Film studies is all about thinking about unrealized projects, because it's about scripts tempting people into getting involved in unrealizable projects. So you just gave me confidence that I'm on the right track.
I think we should leave the fantasists to their own fantasies.
Okay.
I actually
think whether it's about unrealized project or lost films, I mean, once you focus on that, I think you go away actually from many of the individual titles, because it's about how the industry works, whether at the production end or pre-production end, or at the exhibition end, and the post-exhibition life or death. So it's a real change of focus. The textual focus becomes blurred, and the industrial focus becomes much stronger. So that's it. I think these two approaches do not really differ. They don't have to be in one book, though.